Trauma doesn't just hurt you, it rewires you. It shapes how you think, how you react, and who you believe you are. Welcome back to Shit Creek Survivors. We share real stories of people getting stuck up Shit Creek, the paddles they use to get out, and hope for anyone stuck up their own Shit Creek right now. Because we all end up in Shit Creek at some point. In today's episode, we're diving into how trauma shapes your identity, why so many people get stuck in survival mode, and how real healing happens through self-awareness, nervous system regulation, and reconnecting with your authentic self. We'll also explore how nature, mindfulness, and simple daily practices can restore clarity and emotional balance, along with spiritual and energy-based approaches like Reiki that can support deeper healing and self-reconnection. We're sitting down with Steve Fogelman, a trauma survivor turned spiritual coach and creator of Lifeprint Reiki, to break down what trauma actually does to you and how you can start taking your life back. Let's get into it. Steve, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Such a blessing. If you would introduce yourself to our audience.
Well, Cameron, thanks so much for having me on. This is great. This is my first podcast appearance. So
awesome.
I'm honored. So my name is Steve Fogelman. So right now I am a Reiki master, and I guess you can include spiritual coach. But I come from a background. I actually went to college for architecture. I have a degree in architecture, and then I moved to LA, and I became an actor. So I'm actually a professional actor as well, and a filmmaker, and a published playwright. I do all kinds of creative things. I used to be a private chef. I had a clothing line. I used to design swimwear and resort wear.
Jack of all trades. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, this is, this creativity, that is one of the things that we'll talk about later, but being creative is one of the ways that you can really help get back on track from trauma. Just like they use art therapy, you can do that yourself. But so now that, so I wrote a book that your trauma healing journey, Lifeprint Reiki's guide to reconnecting to self-love, because that's the issue really, is that these trauma events have disconnected us from our natural state of self-love. Mm-hmm. So that's what my slogan is. You're not broken. You're only disconnected.
I love it.
Because that kind of makes it, you're not broken. And so it just makes it a little easier to, but back to me, I am, so actually in 2.5 weeks from today that we're recording this, I'm moving to Costa Rica. And that's what I realized, that's what, I don't know if you know about Costa Rica. I know you had mentioned you've been there as a child and your mother spent some time there, but they have what they call pura vida. And it's just sort of this appreciation for life and relaxation. And that's kind of what I'm wanting to help teach people that you can do without moving to Costa Rica. You can find the connections to life that is the joyful. And it really has to do with, connecting yourself as much to nature as possible is another key to creating a paddle for your Shit Creek adventure.
That's interesting. We've actually had another person come on. They talked about forest bathing and kind of finding themselves in nature and immersing into nature. I know that I feel good for whatever reason when I'm out there, even like on the golf course. It's not about the golf. It's about actually being out there, and kind of like, it was very healing to me, which seemed opposite to me because I needed to get away from drinking. So I was wanting to do something outside. I'm like, I guess I'll play golf, which was, not usually something I would do sober, but eventually just the joy of being outside, the sunlight made such a difference. Yeah, I totally get it. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Or even, a lot of guys like to fish. That's that's, there on the water. Water is just so healing, whether it's fresh water or salt water is a little more healing, but
yeah. I'm in Georgia, so I'll hear a lot of guys just say, "I spend more time in the woods than I do at home." Like they actually prefer life out there in the woods, and when they come out of the woods, they're like, "Ah, I don't like this so much." But when they're out
Yeah.
there, kind of just
Oh, I
connected
know.
to,
So I was in Costa Rica in December, and it was like I didn't want to come back. I mean, I'm
hmm
going back, but it was just I knew that this would be because you're just what I do. If you go zip lining, you're going through the trees. You take a boat cruise, sunset cruise, and there's dolphins swimming around you and stuff. And
yeah,
then I took this one river cruise, and there's crocodiles and birds, and you're just, I'm saying you're just connected to this nature, and it's just
yeah,
like it just really feels like me. Well, that's
mm,
oh, can I just because one of the things that I wanted to mention too was that what the trauma does to you is it actually forces you to create a survival personality.
mm,
That's the one that's drinking. That's the one that's has the addictions. That's the one who has to be shopping all the time. That's the one who overeats. That's not.
yeah,
But that is what that's your survival personality. It's not really who you are.
right. Wow, I've never heard it said like that. That makes a lot of sense because sometimes I wouldn't even recognize myself, and the reactions that I would have, and it did feel very survival. At my worst, I literally felt like a dog who had been beaten and then put into a room. What's that dog going to do? It's going to find a corner and it's going to say, "This is my corner. Everyone else can have the rest of the room, but this is my corner. If you come close to me, I'm going to bite you." So, yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Well,
funny what
that's what,
trauma will make you
because
do.
trauma, you have your fight or flight or freeze or fawn response. And
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
what's affecting your nervous system. And so that's a lot of anxiety is just because you don't feel safe. You don't even
mm.
realize, something that happened 20 years ago is why you don't feel safe and why you feel anxious whenever you're out somewhere.
And sometimes I think it can be so ingrained that we don't even realize that we're going into
Yeah.
fight or flight or even having a stress response to the environment around us.
Or that
It's
that you are constantly in fight or flight mode,
yeah,
because it just becomes you think that's who you are because it's
yeah,
happened so many years ago and you've just adapted without having any professional help in resolving
yeah,
that issue.
yeah, it
Yeah,
is
so and that's
strange.
what part of in the book, one of the major thing is really gaining self-awareness.
Mm,
That's the major step in in gaining spiritual awareness, awakening, and just self-awareness to why you behave the way that you do, or why do you
yeah,
respond. Why does something trigger you?
yeah.
And
So
it's
Steve,
just
let's not get too far into it. We got to share what your Shit Creek story is for
oh
this
right,
episode. We all have a bunch of
yeah,
Shit Creeks, but which one
yeah.
would you like to share today?
Well, I would just kind of put mine in a different category where it's not necessarily a specific event, but I'm sure many of your listeners can relate to this, is that I grew up in a narcissistic family
Okay.
dynamic, which I didn't realize that growing up. And
Yeah.
I was also on the autism spectrum, which
Mhm.
wasn't diagnosed until I was 55 years old.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. So I had just and what happens when you have these sort of what is emotional trauma,
Mhm.
abuse kind of things, that behavior, the traumas just kind of snowball of one thing
Yeah.
because of your survival personality is dealing with things that just makes things worse. I have
Mhm.
no you have very limited emotional intelligence, or actually like zero ability to understand your emotions or express them in a healthy way or feeling needed. So
Mhm.
that is so that's the basis. Kind of, I didn't necessarily have a
Y
specific traumatic
right.
event, a major, physical harm or something like that. It just built up. But then, but what I talk about in the book too is the turning point. Well, there were two turning points. Um, well, because what happened was about 20 years ago, 25 years ago. um, look, we had this family business. We were in the garment business,
Mm-hmm.
and my father had passed away. And so this is good. So the business, my father and my mother's sister's husband, uncle, were running the business in Pennsylvania that my grandfather had started. It was a
Mm-hmm.
clothing. He started out as a tailor. You know that old story of you create a business. And my father was looking to get out of it. This was around 1996. So yeah, like 30 years ago.
Okay.
And he was kind of leaving the business. And my uncle, he was 44 at the time. He just one day he dropped dead. He just had like a massive heart attack and died. And so since my father was still part of that, he had to come back. And how contracts are made, like my uncle's shares were bought out. And so now
Mm-hmm.
it was just my family who owned the whole business.
Right.
My aunt's family no longer had connection to the business, and it became phenomenally successful.
Okay.
I mean, seriously successful. And my aunt didn't have any legal rights to that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to say maybe 10 years late. No, I guess it was just about 7 years later, she got remarried. And her new husband, who went to law school, he came to work in our HR department. And so, um, and so business started to, cause we only had one client.
Oh,
we were just,
wow.
we made pants. So we made ladies pants for this one client. We would make like 5 million pairs of pants a year.
That's a lot of pants.
Yeah. And so, but because they were sending more work to, Vietnam, I guess it was, we were
Mm.
losing some funds. And so my brother asked all of the, staff to take a 20% temporary 20% pay cut. And so on that, my, my aunt's husband, he quit
Mm.
and, and sued our family. I'm sure people can relate to this inner.
Yeah.
I mean, you can understand, but anyway, so I was really upset about this, and I wrote a very angry letter to my aunt,
Mm-hmm.
and then the next day I apologized. So I was just so surprised that how there was not only the animosity from my cousins, but actually like friends of my aunts, people who I knew, whatever. There's like all this animosity towards me. It just
Mm-hmm.
really destroyed the family falling apart. And it took me 20 years to learn that I was the victim of a narcissistic smear campaign. That's how
Mm.
those work in narcissistic families, or that narcissistic abuse.
Yeah.
Um, so
So,
that was the sort of the catalyst into the beginning of my searching, because
mhm.
that was I find that, and you'll see other people too, that, when you're in these sort of situations, you have to find something outside spiritually,
Mm-hmm.
and I was raised Jewish, but I have I have a great disdain for religion. It's
Mm.
very different than spirituality. But so I had got involved then with the Kabbalah Center. I don't know if you're familiar with the Kabbalah Center or Kabbalah.
Not
The,
so much. Will you explain it really quick?
well, Kabbalah is an ancient wisdom that was channeled in a cave by this Rabbi Shimon. I forget the name. Shimon ben Shimon. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah. I'm terrible with names too.
um, and so Kabbalah, right? So it's it's just, I guess it's just an understanding of life and things in the Torah on a higher level of understanding.
Got it.
So Kabbalah and the Kabbalah Center are really two different things. Yeah, I used to see Madonna every weekend when, Madonna's part of this and other celebrities are part of that. But
Yeah.
it is, in fact, a cult of Judaism, whether you want to, which doesn't necessarily make it a bad thing, but
Right.
that's what it is. It's not, it's a cult. They're really mostly interested in money, and there's all kinds of, the son of the, the, well, when the sons of the leader, I can't think of his name right now, but he had to step down because of sexual abuse allegations from other types of. So I'm saying
Oh,
sexual abuse is the key sign of a cult.
yeah.
But I learned a lot. There's certainly things to learn, and but that started my deeper spiritual path. And then it was in 2011 or 10. So I moved to New York after 25 years in LA because my grandmother had died in 2011, like at the age of 99, and my mom was 79, so it was like, well, maybe
Mhm.
I'll move back east to hang around my mom till the end. And
Right.
I had this apartment that I didn't know at the time was owned by this gangster family, New York crime family, the Goldmans. I mean, I can say that it's because it's documented. I have a whole, if you look up, well, I did a whole lot of research, and I have like a 7,000 word essay that describes all the criminal stuff that the family had done. But anyway, so they were doing all kinds of illegal construction, which was just
Mm.
so noisy. Um, and I was trying to get it stopped. And so that's how I got who is it? Jane Goldman is the one woman who runs the company now. And she's being sued by her nephew to take over the company. It's just, that's just, but anyway, so
Yeah.
that was that um, situation where I got out of the apartment and I landed here, and I had a dog too. That's why you wonder, well, why do you stay in such toxic situations for like 4 years? Like finding an apartment in New York with a 70-pound dog is challenging,
Yeah.
So that was what I just thought, well, I'll just see if I can stick it out till the dog passes. And, but so we moved out of there in 2018, cause she threatened to sue me cause I was telling brokers about the illegality of all her units. I mean, I was not even, they all know, everybody knows the name and
Yeah.
the real estate. But so that was 2018. And then May of 2019, my dog died
Oh.
of 13 years. And that was
Mm.
like, oh my God, it was just absolutely devastating. I was
Yeah.
kind of by myself, if you're on the spectrum. And did I know that? Yeah, I had found out by then that I was on the spectrum.
Mhm.
And, so with my therapist, it was very interesting because what he set out to do, what he said, well, let's figure out who is Steve 2.0. So this is and I talk about that in the book too, that it's like, and what I didn't realize then, because when I was doing all my grieving and all the meditating, I was looking at self-love meditations, guided meditations on YouTube, which was
Yeah.
very helpful. And I also discovered this term. Have you heard the term post-traumatic growth?
Yes. Yes, I
Yeah,
have definitely heard.
PTG. So that's became my mantra of like, okay, well, well, let's grow, phoenix from the ashes kind of thing.
Mm, yeah.
And so then the pandemic hit. And so here I am in New York, and everybody, all my actor friends, everybody was out of work.
Hmm.
Nobody was working and doing anything. But who knew if acting would come back? You know what I'm saying? You just didn't
Yeah.
know. And so I felt there was a series of non-coincidental coincidences. I started studying, I became a certified life coach.
Cool.
And, but before, in January of 2020, I had this Sabian astrology reading. I don't necessarily know what the difference is. Sabian is a other philosophy you can look into that, um, or your viewers can. Um, but in that reading, which I never had one like that before, had mentioned that anything that I did that was spiritual would be successful. Now I
Okay.
never, so it's like, this is the thing. And so after I became the life coach, I then became a registered spiritual coach.
Okay.
So you can see I'm kind of, and never in a million years would I have ever expected that I would be doing something spiritual related. You know what I mean? It just did not,
Yeah.
I'm an actor. Everything was just much more ego related or satisfying pursuits that I had. Um,
Right.
and then also during the pandemic or right before, I started having a Reiki master was helping me deal with these energies and difficulty things that I was happening. And so that was always in the back of my mind. Oh, that could be very helpful.
Hmm.
And so when, as a spiritual coach, then I started writing this thing. You always want to have something written or an ebook or something that shows. And I wrote this thing called the Self-Love Journey, which is a lot of it became into the book, the different steps, my 11 insights to happiness, and
Okay.
um, understanding awareness and the Reiki. And so then I started the Reiki training. There's
Hmm.
4 levels. There's, level 1, 2, 3, then the master teacher level. And I did all those over the next few years. And so to where the point is, the healing comes from going in and understanding, um, you are part of, there is no God outside you.
Hmm.
That's why, to me, people going to religion for soothing, it's not as helpful as going within and understanding your own power.
Mm,
Your own power.
yeah.
You are a piece of creation.
Yeah.
Because religion tells you you're not, that you're sinful and you're no good and you need this, and it just makes the trauma worse because you're
Yeah.
trying to feel good about yourself. We've seen that, people like Tina Turner, was famously, her tumultuous life. If people aren't familiar, she was married in a completely abusive relationship, and she turned to Buddhism.
Hmm.
So I think, turning to some spirituality that doesn't have sin involved,
Yeah.
because sin is man-made. There's absolutely no such thing as sin in the spiritual world. That is
Hmm.
just used to control people. Um, so I think that's what kind of brought me to here. When you become empowered, people who have religious beliefs, if there's so many things, anything that you might call woo-woo,
Hmm.
that means you have religious trauma. So
Yeah.
there's 4 kinds of trauma. There's current life trauma, there's past life soul trauma, there's religious trauma, and then there's ancestral trauma. Our traumas are passed down from our ancestors. It gets down. It's in our DNA.
Oh,
We've
wow.
known that it's called epigenetics
Okay.
is the field, and so that's what trying to filter all those out, because sometimes they overlap. It's not, you can't
Yeah.
really tell, but I mean, you could have an eating disorder because your grandmother survived a famine.
Oh,
Do you
wow.
know, do you see how that relates?
Yeah.
It's not always, nothing is your, so the major thing to understanding is however you are dealing with life now that may be challenging, it's not your fault.
Oh,
It's
I
not your
like that.
fault. You are the
Yeah.
way you are. All these things that happened, but we carry, it's just because people listening, you're carrying, so much shame and guilt and fear. And
Yeah.
and you need to release that and rise above that. And that's where, the whole idea of like forgiveness or self-forgiveness, it's really self-forgiveness. It's really just about releasing the shame and the guilt of things in the past. If you were, molested as a child, you don't maybe not even realize that you have tremendous shame over that
Yeah.
for not being able to, or having agency at the time. And that's what, the self-forgiveness is, to forgive yourself for that shame. It's not your fault. It's not your
I
fault.
love it.
And it's not even the fault of the person who molested you or did whatever kind of thing, because, um, it's just how humanity has set this up, that because we, we learn, our souls learn from this trauma. So one of the biggest things to take away, to understand too, is that we are not humans with souls. We are souls having human learning experiences.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's sort of like, what does, one lesson that you could say, well, what am I learning from this? Well, one lesson that you can learn is that you're extremely strong as hell.
Mm-hmm.
Because how many of your toughest days have you made it through? Every
100%.
single one of them.
Yep.
Do you know what I'm saying? So we can
Yep.
start to, that's sort of a basic lesson. And how does that feel? That makes, yeah, okay. Oh, well, I've made it through. Like, yeah, I am really strong. You know what I'm saying? So that kind of the negativity of how we feel about ourselves starts to fade when we start to think about, well, what are the lessons that my soul wanted to learn
So
or
is that
needed to?
one of the moments where you start to kind of guide someone? Because it I for the person who's listening who actually feels like they can't get out of this shame, and you're suggesting self-love, how do you start? Like, how would a person like me who experienced, sexual trauma as a child, who felt shame from that without even realizing that that wasn't actually who, because shame seems to be more of like an identity. It's like I'm dirty compared to like I regret doing that. And so how do you suggest a person when they're feeling that shame, they know it's unbearable, how do they then go inward, and at least go inward with self-love and compassion? Like, how would you suggest that? Because
Yeah.
I think a lot of times we're quick to strike at ourselves and be like, get it together, or you know what I mean, like, just suck it up, like that sort of thing, and just get through it, you know what I mean? But it never actually goes away, because I found out, like, after I got shot, that that old trauma resurfaced with a vengeance, you know what I mean? It wanted to be seen, it wanted to be heard, and I didn't want anyone to know about it. I had kept that secret for a long time, and I felt bad about myself because of it. And now rewinding and like looking back at it, hindsight's 2020, like I've been able to do a lot of work with professionals and like understand that like I was 5 years old, this wasn't my fault, and like all this kinds of stuff. But it's weird what we do to ourselves. So we're dealing with shame internally, we're trying to tell ourselves that it wasn't our fault. We're trying to like represent that 5-year old or whoever it was, but it's like really hard to let it go. Does that make sense to you? Like,
Yes, absolutely. Because this is what the challenge of any kind of spiritual growth is difficult, because the ego doesn't like things to change. So even when the ego would rather be miserable in the known misery than dealing with the unknown of happiness. of potential
Oh,
happiness because it's unknown. So that's really frightening. So that's another thing that's difficult on these healing journeys is that your ego actually doesn't want you to heal.
it's a
So
trap.
that's yeah. So
Wow.
so so that's what. So it's all about having your soul is the one that wants to express and learn and heal. But so
It's like
so so to your
it's
question to start. Well, first of all, let me say, I mean, if you've had any type of serious situations like you described, I really would suggest that you get a professional mental health um,
yeah,
counselor. That it's not necessarily something that can be done all by yourself.
right.
Um,
It's just the transition into like maybe I should love myself enough
yeah,
to seek more help.
yeah.
Like that's such a hard thing to do because when you're about to let that secret out of your mouth, it feels like 1 billion pounds and it feels like the whole world's going to crumble once it comes out of your lips. But what's interesting, and I will say to everyone listening out there, is that the world doesn't crumble. Nothing stops. The world
Yeah.
doesn't stop turning. It actually, if anything, it's only for you. Everyone else is still going to run their lives and do whatever they're going to do. It's actually for you to get it out of your system and be like, wow, I said it, and
People
it,
don't
it's in,
really care. They don't really judge that.
and we've been worrying the whole time that they will,
Exactly. Well,
you
because
know,
it's the shame of other things. Um,
yeah, where to start if a person wanted to kind of journey into self love after feeling shame for so long, which does not have self love attached to it.
yeah. Well, there's a few things. Well, like I had mentioned in the beginning, is gaining self awareness
Mm,
of why do you feel the shame? And people may not necessarily realize that it's specifically shame that they're feeling.
hmm
I
Yeah.
mean, we because we've been through this and know what the shame or the guilt is, but it's really understanding why do I have this reaction? Because um, well, here's a good thing. What's a great start is journaling.
Mm.
Have you ever heard of anyone mention
A,
that?
a little bit. Yeah. If you would kind of explain it.
Well, I'm just saying journaling because and that means writing by hand and not on the computer because there's something that happens between the brain and the hand that actually can help release that emotion and trauma because it's moving, it's somatic. You can't
Yeah.
heal trauma just by talking. You have to be moving. It's some kind of moving somatic
No,
therapies,
that
which
makes
means
sense.
which means movement. And so that's, just writing about how horrible you feel. That's what I did when, um, I have like my grief journal when my dog died. I was just writing every day, just how horrible I was feeling or
Yeah.
just whatever. And getting that out is a really good step. Um,
Because it,
and
it helps you process it, right? Because,
exactly, that's what we want to process it because right now
yeah.
it's stuck somewhere. And it's also, you can think of, because, trauma is stored in the body
hmm
in different areas of the body. And so that tells us too, where does it hurt? This tells
Yeah.
you kind of where that trauma is trapped. But I think another thing that's really helpful, because you want to connect to the spiritual service,
Yeah.
volunteering,
Yeah.
giving. That is if you're, unless your trauma has created you and turned you into a people pleaser.
Uh-huh.
People pleasers who who want to who do
It's
things for
like
people, like, well,
yeah.
like a lot of people don't realize it, but their grandmothers are a lot of people pleasers. They think it's love that they're making all these things for you, whatever, but they need to do this they need to do stuff for people in order to feel validated for themselves. you know S-
Yeah. I've heard about that. Like the need to see yourself as good through other people's eyes. Yeah. Instead
yeah,
of like just being able to be like, I'm a good person, I do my best on a daily basis. It's like, I need you to tell, like, either visually, you're happy that I gave you something, or verbally, you say something like, I appreciate you know what I mean? I get what you're saying for sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily I just use that as an example because it's kind of easy to understand. Oh, grandma's of that, because you may not have ever thought of that because grandma
No,
seems
no.
perfectly
Yeah.
happy or whatever, she's loving. It feels like love, and it is love, but there's just something deeper going on behind that.
Wow. That's
You should need to
interesting.
get a little sip.
Yeah, that is super interesting. Because I've caught
So
myself in that too. Like, for a long time, my ego needed me to see me the way that I needed you to see me. Do you get what I mean? I was too reliant on your opinion of me compared to just my own, you know? Um, and it's like we've talked about it before on here, kind of giving away your power a little bit. I guess that's one of the best ways to
yeah,
kind of explain it to a person like verbally. It's like, why do we give the power of how we feel about ourselves to somebody else? That doesn't even make sense. You wouldn't even tell your friend or
no,
whoever to do that. So
but it's a survival personality. It was
is
done
it?
for survival.
Uh,
And part of that, it goes back. It's in the when we were in tribes.
mhm.
Some I talk about these psychological, ancient things happening in the brain that are survival, the things that we need to do to be part of a tribe, or how. And so that is because if you were thinking, if people didn't see me the way I saw me, then I might not survive.
Right. Right. I might not be valuable or yeah, part of okay. That makes sense. That's survival instinct to the core. I mean, that's the idea of like, I don't want to be ostracized from this group, so I've got to look just like them. I've got to be in the center of the pack.
That's
Um,
abandonment issues.
is it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it all starts to become connected, um, of why we nobody wants to be abandoned. Um,
Yeah.
but when you can break through that, this is what you become so empowered. That's what I just feel so empowered. I don't know if my energy comes off that way, but I don't care what other people think. I don't care. Well, I'll say, like, I don't have contact with most of my family members.
Hmm.
And so when the pandemic came around and we were separated, it was like, oh my God, I felt so free. It's like I don't have to deal with my toxic family. There's no, family obligations of things that I had to deal with, and it's just been wonderful.
Yeah.
But that's another one of those 11 insights boundaries with people that often, in families, there's just really poor boundaries, and you aren't even aware
Yeah.
of boundaries being violated. Things. That's why it's sort of, I guess, the stuff that I see on TikTok is what you draw. So I see a lot of the boundaries, or the how this going no contact with parents or other people, that they're calling it a fad, but it's really just people waking up to their
Hmm.
inner strength. That we don't have to be, you don't have to do things because someone else thinks that's the right thing to do. You can,
Or
it's
yeah, or
perfectly all
that's who
right to do
you are.
whatever you want, whatever you
Yeah.
need, whoever you need in your life, or whoever you don't need in your life. It's perfectly acceptable.
Yeah. Yeah. Instead of living for someone else's dreams for you, you decide
Uh,
I'm
all
gonna
right. Well,
live for
those are
me.
good. That's another. That's another 11 insights, is dealing with attachments and expectations.
Yeah.
So these are the things, and so as I'm saying, these are not religious, but it's just you don't even realize attachments that you have to things, expectations you have about things, expectations put on you, expectations you put on other people. And all that
Hmm.
does, when those aren't met, it causes suffering.
Yeah.
You get upset if, um, your vacation isn't a Instagram worthy thing. you know, you
Yeah.
realize, parents have all these expectations they put on children that have nothing to do with the child's needs. It's only
Right.
their needs, where they want to go to school, or who they should marry, all that kind of stuff. That's actually traumatizing your children. when you have
Yeah.
these expectations that you set on children is traumatizing.
Yeah. Almost like a whole vision for their life. And then
Right.
you're fed that vision. And then at some point you're like, I don't know if this is what I want to do. Like, did I come up with
Ex-
this idea? And then you start kind of like processing that and you're like, this isn't even what I want to do. Yeah. That makes
Yeah,
sense. I think a lot
there's
of
all
people
kind.
have experienced that.
But we were talking about other things another way to start to heal, I think is, and it's the number one. I have it in the number one of the 11 insights is curiosity.
Mm,
And I have it number one. It's not like there's an order really, but it's just because everyone who's listening to this is curious. So
hmm.
about how
Yeah.
new ways to heal or things like that. And so that is learning, even you can be taking a new class of something, learning something new. That's what humans are by nature, curious people. And
Yeah.
so it's just, but also doing something creative is also very soulful and connects us. The minute you start singing, you are connected to your spirit.
Yeah.
The minute when you're dancing, that's why people love doing that. Creating art, art is a great way to release the trauma. Look at the great painters, whatever, Jackson Pollock and Keith Haring. You're just really finding ways to put your trauma and express it in 2D, you know,
Yeah.
um, or even crocheting or knitting is creative, and scrapbooking. These are all simple things that I'm sure some of your listeners already do. But when
Yeah.
you understand that it's a spiritual act when you're creating, when you're knitting little booties for your grandchild, that is a spiritual act of creation. You're creating something. And cooking too. I used to be I went to cooking school. I was a private chef for a while, and that was some of the best years. The most financially lucrative for me was when I was a chef. I was
Oh, wow.
private chef caterer. So you're cooking, you're creating, you're changing recipes, tweaking, the idea, oh, what if I add a little bit more cinnamon? Well, that's creative, that's actual spiritual act. You know what I'm
Oh,
saying?
cool.
Of
Yeah.
those kind of things. So there's a lot of simple things, I mean, I guess it depends, if there's a lot of, I had a lot of depression before. I was medicated for like 5 years, on
Yeah.
serious like SSRIs and some kind of like antipsychotic medications and what's that word? Not Valium, Xanax.
Xanax. Yeah.
Xanax was my friend. Yeah, I didn't know how I'm not on any of those medications now, so it's nice to know that you can get off them. But
Hmm.
I had no, of all the things that you said, I had no, for 5 years, I didn't cook anything. I didn't make any,
Really?
I mean, I just had no, doing any art or writing any plays, or I call those my lost years,
Oh, wow.
because it'll be, 14 years, I believe it or not, that I've lived in New York, and it only feels like 7 because
Really?
those years were lost, like, you know?
It's kind of like a blur.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow. That's funny. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so, I
I,
mean, depression can be well, and that was, I did, when I got off the medication, um, that was during the pandemic, I did research into, microdosing psilocybin,
hmm.
and so there was here in New York, it doesn't exist anymore, but there was, like, illegal stores where you could buy a chocolate-laced,
Yeah.
um, or I should say mushroom-laced chocolate,
Yeah.
and so it was like, "Okay, it's 33 milligrams per bar. I want to take 3 milligrams, so cut up into pieces." And like every other day for like a week, I took a piece, and it didn't. It just made me want to sing karaoke. So it wasn't, it wasn't any negative kind of thing. It was not. It was not like a what do you call it? That psychedelic trip kind of thing.
Yeah.
That if you took took more. And, um, and I never even finish it all, but I haven't had any type of depression symptoms since that was like 4 years ago, I guess.
Wow. So you think actually doing that chocolate bar, you know,
Uh,
uh, kind of helped, or was it
well,
just kind of
the
more?
microdosing psilocybin, ketamine. Have you heard of ketamine?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. These are procedures that have been shown to be helpful for depression. So I think depression is a major connection to trauma, suffering.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I'm interested in that stuff. I definitely need to do my research. I've seen other people doing what ayahuasca.
I've done that.
There's how did you enjoy that? Was that helpful to you?
Well, yeah, in October of 2023, I went to Peru for a couple weeks. It was the shamanic induction.
Wow.
And so we're doing all different kinds of plant medicines. And I went really just so that I could tell people about it. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
If they wanted to know if it would be helpful for them or whatever. And so I have a pacemaker, so
Uh-huh.
I wasn't able to do a full dose.
Okay.
But I did still experience the same, the purging. That's a lot of the vomiting and
Yeah.
the psychedelic. It is totally psychedelic. Um, but I didn't experience the deep. Everyone else who had these full dosages, they experienced tremendous fears.
Uh-huh.
But I mean, that's the purpose of any type of plant medicine, is to show you your fears, because you may not even realize that that's your fear.
Really? Yeah. So it's basically facing your fears. It's
Facing
gonna
your fears is what plant medicine is basically,
Oh
because I find that
wow.
too with marijuana. You know how
Uh-huh.
like marijuana makes some people get paranoid or
Yes.
fearful or whatever. It's actually doing its job.
Really?
But if you're doing it, recreationally without any kind of intention, any kind of healing intention, it's just. But I found that, because knowing now that anytime that I feel fear, there's something that's fear is not real.
Mm,
Unless there's someone pointing a gun at you, or there's no reason to be fearful.
yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? So, but we would, and so I found, like the marijuana would make me be a little paranoid, and I would know, oh, that's not real. That's just I would call it my trauma. And
Mhm.
then simply just breathing into that no knowledge, it just released it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So, breath work. Oh, that's looking into breath work. There's all kinds of videos and things of different kinds of breath work, prana. I
Yeah, I've
can't
been
think of
doing the breath work where you inhale 4, hold, I think it's hold 7, and then breathe out 8 through your
4, 7,
nose.
8. Yeah.
And then you do that like multiple times. It's amazing how like someone told me about it, I'm sure a long time ago, and I'm like, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But when you actually do it, there's an immediate effect, like an immediate effect. And you don't even realize that up until that point, you thought you were fine, but you're actually breathing shallow, like because you were tight. You know what I mean? Like it's like you forget actually that you're so tight when you're in trauma all the time because it's like that you think that's normal, but if you actually take the time to slow yourself down, do the breath work. What's the name of this? The Is it the sympathetic nervous system that gets like kind of like
The pa-
activated or deactivated, and then
was it the
you just
parasympathetic? I know it's the
it's
vagus
probably
nerve.
it's
The
probably
vagus
parrot.
nerve is
Yeah.
the one, and there's different ways to release that. To yawning. Yawning
Yawning will do it
releases.
too.
Yeah. I do that constantly. That happens because of whatever traumas I have. I'm not necessarily an easy crier. So
Okay.
I can feel this energy build up in my chest, and then I just kind of start breathing into it, and it creates yawns. I'm yawning and releasing that energy.
Okay. I like that.
Yeah.
I'd rather be yawning. Yeah. Sometimes it comes upon me and I end up crying like a little kid. But
No, but if you're
again,
crying,
after.
No, but crying is fine. It's only because you're taught, oh, men don't cry, or you're not supposed to express emotions, or, you know what I'm saying, or emotions, having emotions is a weakness. And that's traumatic. That's
Yeah,
actually, you know, as we don't realize the, you know, the toxic masculinity that we have in this country because people are taught, men don't cry, or things don't, you know, things aren't supposed to be important to us, or something like that can't be important. And
I just
I
realized
think
that.
that
Yeah,
creates
like
more
so.
shame. There's more shame about who you are because you're not, you know, fulfilling the ideal masculine part of person who's being a stoic. You know, like
Yeah,
we're just supposed to be. Although stoicism is really different than being stoic, and actually, there's a lot of positive things in stoicism.
yeah, yeah. I do enjoy some of that. The controllables and uncontrollables and that sort of stuff. Yeah. This is
We
this is caused a lot of thinking in this head of mine, which is dangerous.
Well, that's
but
great. Well,
but
if you read the well, that's what, like, in the book, there's exercises and things, you know, journal prompts to help you dig and look into what Carl Jung calls the shadow self. That's your
that's
survival
so
personality,
interesting.
you know, because when you can make friends with your shadow and understand that whatever it is, the behavior that you have, when you understand why you need that, you don't necessarily feel as guilty or shameful
Yeah.
about those behaviors. So that's what it's learning to accept yourself fully with your wonderful personality behaviors and your survival personality behaviors. And then you can also then, you know, once you understand them, it's not that big of a draw.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we have, you know,
Self-love is
like
hard.
the thing that
So,
comes into, especially people spending money that they don't have.
right.
You know, that's a major issue in our country of people in debt. Debt, being in debt doesn't make you feel good. You know,
Uh-uh.
that causes more shame that you can't pay your card, or who knows what's going to happen, or, you know,
Yeah.
fear of losing your house, or, you know,
Yeah.
but that's because we need to get that TV to feel good about ourselves, or we need to go on that vacation we can't afford because that's going to make us feel better about ourselves, that we look like we have money.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, there's the key right there. So we look like we have money. So we look
Yeah.
like we've got the life that everyone wants. So we look a certain way. So it's like you're more worried about how you look than the reality
Yeah.
of what's
I don't know if you know,
happening.
like, I don't know if you, in pop culture news, you know, David Beckham and his wife, what's her name, the Spice Girl, they have a son, Brooklyn, who's gone estranged from the family for simply because it is a narcissistic family.
Hmm.
And he was just sick of all of their posing and trying to look like a happy family when it was just a toxic situation.
Yeah.
So most people on, um, social media, when they're bragging about how much they love their spouse or their child did this or that, you don't know that they're, you know, they're likely not, because if you are
Right.
truly happy with who you are, or things happen, you don't need to brag about it.
Right. Right. And you don't need other people's opinions to reinforce the way that you're thinking. Because you've already got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny what happens to us though. We get kind of like pulled into the world. You know what I mean? We get pulled in just a little bit at a time when you're young, and especially like, I'm 43 now. I'm not sure how old you are, but we grew up like initially everyone had the same shoes. And then eventually Nike came out with like something and people are like, "Oh, that's an amazing sneaker." Everyone's like, "They're just sneakers." And now it's like really like it's not even about a sneaker. It's about I have this exact shoe from this exact person, from this exact company, which makes me this person. And you're like, "Well, you just gave up your identity for a brand."
Yeah. Well,
And
I'm going to be 65 in 3 weeks.
so
So
it
I
used to be
know.
about t-shirts and jeans, and now it's what t-shirt, what jeans. Like
Yeah.
t-shirts nowadays can cost hundreds of dollars. I'm sure thousands of dollars in some places.
It is
That's
surprising.
yeah, and it's all because someone's name is on it. It's not about like the
Yeah. But
material
if
it's
you
made
know,
out of.
actually, like, wealthy seriously wealthy people don't wear designer clothing.
Right. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's only for people who want to be perceived as
Yeah.
having wealth.
So it actually it signals that in their core, they don't actually believe that them themselves are that person. They have to get the things to be that person. So it's if you break it down backwards, almost like a CIA operator would be like, this is the motive. The motive isn't about you feeling better about it's just such a strange thing that we do to ourselves. And now it's so bad that like you could 1 second you've got the optimum phone, it's got everything on it, and within 12 months you're gonna get a message saying your phone is terrible because we put a new phone out and you're less than
Yeah,
without it. And it's just
exactly.
we're
Well,
running
look at, like,
around.
when you see, like, some new phone is announced and there's people waiting in line to get a new phone.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
what's up with that?
It's a phone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you
It's
know,
crazy.
there's something that they're trying to feel good, create some kind of inner validation
Yeah.
externally by
And it
having the new phone because they don't change that much. I had an
no.
iPhone 11 for so many years, and I got the 15 in 2023 just because I wanted a better camera when I went to Peru.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah,
But I've
for
had the
sure.
same phone for
Yeah, they're all under the same operating system. And now I know there's planned obsolescence and all that kind of stuff. That 2-year marker comes up and all of a sudden your phone breaks and it's like out of nowhere. But in the last month of your contract, you're like, come on, man. Like you're just trying to get me to get a new phone. Anyways, I won't get too far off track. I have to ask Steve, if someone were in their own shit creek right now, which means they're in a situation where they might feel hopeless and they're questioning whether they want to go forward, what words of advice would you give them since you survived your own shit creek?
yes. Well, I would go to Spotify and look up the band Wilson Phillips and put on the song "Hold On" and play
Mm.
that continuously. Do you know that? Are you familiar with that song?
Yeah, yeah. One more
Yeah.
day.
Hold on for one more day. Yeah,
Yeah.
because that's just what is, because whatever the the hopelessness that you feel now actually will pass. And like I said, you've made it through all of the other days that you thought you wouldn't make it through. So you can get through
Yep.
this difficulty, and you just kind of have to hold on for just keep one day at a time. You
Yeah.
must be familiar with that phrase.
Yeah.
Um, And that's actually, because we didn't really talk too much about Reiki, but that's the Usui Reiki was kind of the initial one day at a time, the precepts of Reiki, which was interesting because I had seen them. There's that show, Mike and Molly,
Hmm.
the Overeaters are at Overeaters Anonymous kind of thing. And I was watching it and there on the board behind was the Reiki precepts of, taking the one day, just for today, I won't be angry just for today. These, just for today, I'll work hard. Just for today, I'll be kind, that you just kind
Yeah.
of focus on that one day. And that's kind of basically every, Eckhart Tolle, if you're familiar with his spiritual writing, everything that's all that's happening is in the present.
Yeah.
There's nothing happening in the future and there's nothing happening in the past. It's everything is happening right now. And
Yeah.
so that's just for today. So,
There's something freeing about that. At first, it was kind of like, given to me through AA, where I'm like, all right, just, focus on today. Don't drink today. Don't worry about tomorrow. Don't worry about yesterday, all that kind of stuff. But you find that it's very freeing because you get to put down the weight, the stress of yesterday. You get to put down
yeah,
the weight, the stress of tomorrow, and only deal with the weight and the stress of right now. And if you get to stay in that moment, you can realize, maybe there isn't as much stress and panic as in reality as what I'm feeling. And
absolutely. Yeah,
you start acclimating. You know what I mean? But if you're worried about right here, right now, and then you're holding the weight of tomorrow and you're holding the weight of yesterday, I panic. I panic, you know what I mean? Because it's too much for me. But if I get to put down those 2 things and just look at today, like the next problem on the test, instead of worrying about the whole test, just the next problem, my life is a lot easier.
Yeah.
It's simpler.
Well, I think also too, if they don't have any type of therapist, that would be really, it would behoove, that's a fancy word for, it would help them to find ways to um, get out of that hopelessness.
Yeah, yeah, and choose
Um,
yourself. You gotta choose yourself. It's
yeah. Well, that's what the
we
self-love, like self-love, self-care, it's self-love is a spirituality. It's not just massages and scented candles,
Yeah,
and walks in the park. It's a whole way of understanding of that's what I'm saying, prioritizing yourself, having healthy boundaries,
mhm,
So I'm feeling that, someone listening to this right now is feeling really bad because their family is just so unsupportive. They
mm,
don't even, this is the thing that I have too with TV shows is that there's like a narcissistic person in every TV show. It's the mother or whatever that's putting someone down, or even in Mike and Molly, Mike is constantly barraged by fat jokes.
yeah,
Although Molly never receives a single one. She's never made, but even someone who says he's his best friend is constantly making him feel bad about his weight.
right,
And so this is what, but I mean, that's TV. And so we're conditioned to, oh, if someone's teasing, that it becomes teasing. It's not traumatizing.
right,
It's just harmless teasing, but it's not. That's what I'm saying.
yeah,
So that's kind of in the boundaries that we have to see, who do we have around us? Because
mhm,
it can be just eliminating one person, um,
yeah,
which is difficult, or can be difficult. But because they
sometimes
say
necessary.
people with too many friends, um, what am I trying to say? It's a bigger, stronger strength to have fewer friends.
Yeah, yeah, the circle is stronger. I get it,
Well, it's
yeah,
not just the circle is stronger. It's just because being popular is again getting like external validation of how we feel. We don't
right,
feel insecure if we're popular.
right, right, and once you let go of that, it turns out you don't need as many friends, you
You're
know?
just putting on a front. It's just part of your survival personality that you feel you need all these people to survive, when it can actually be so emotionally draining to have to do
Yeah,
all these things that you maybe really don't want to do.
yeah, and in the end, in some circumstances, you have to choose yourself, and in a lot of circumstances, especially addiction, not only do you have to choose yourself, but you have to separate yourself from the people, places, and things that might keep you
Yeah.
sick. So
Oh,
that's a tough thing, you know?
yeah. I just thought another thing that can be helpful is trying to do something new every
Mhm,
day. Now, so what is new? New can be having something different for breakfast,
mhm.
because you need to break up the pattern that you're in of
Yeah,
behaviors, and so because that pattern is attached to your um, trauma or your depression. And so
mhm.
doing different things, it could be, if you're driving, taking a different route to work, walking the dog on different streets,
Yeah,
um, order a different number at McDonald's, trying a candy bar you've never tried. You know what I mean?
mhm.
It's not watching a TV show that you've never seen before. These are all new things. Um,
Yeah,
and it's not really that difficult, because when you are showing the universe that you're open to new things happening, then more new things can happen for you.
I believe that.
You get out of that rut of happening, and it's just the small changes can make a really big difference.
I totally agree. I totally agree. And it doesn't happen like the feeling doesn't flip overnight, if you're feeling depressed and all that kind of stuff. But when you start building those new habits, like you were saying, it just got me thinking that like it takes time, but the the good feelings about yourself start creeping in with that new habit, with that new, movement. It's not like overnight you're like, oh, I went to the park once and I'm, feeling better. It's like I went to the park for a whole week, or I went to the park for a whole month. And that's amazing. I never thought I would do that. You know what I mean? I can't believe it's amazing. Like, you just have to get some things done and then you're able to look at yourself and be like, I actually did it. You know what I mean? I didn't just hope, I didn't just think about it. I took action and I moved forward. And that becomes addictive, because we talked about post-traumatic growth. You eventually, once you lean into that, you can take more from the situation than it took from you. And that's an incredible
Yes.
thing. You know,
Well, that leads me into another phrase that I have. You can't change the past, but you can change how you feel about
yeah, yeah, for sure.
it. And so that's what it's all about. Like I said, finding the lesson in the past
Yeah,
um, is really helpful, and the forgiveness of the past that can just really change how you feel it
yeah.
in the
I
present.
I used to think it didn't matter. It does matter. You kind of got to go back and you got to look at it. You got to feel it. It's not always comfortable, but
Yeah.
it
Well, that's the thing.
does. It helps.
Healing is grieving. So that's why it's it's challenging.
Yeah,
Um, I mean, there's nobody listening that can't do that because you've already been through so much. That's why, after you experience a great loss is a great time to do that because you're already feeling pretty crappy.
yeah,
um,
yeah. The the hardest part is just to get going. So if anyone's listening out there right now and you need a sign to keep going or get started. Do what you got to do. Today is the right day. There is no perfect day. It starts now.
yeah. All right. I have another slogan. I say, you only need to suffer until you realize you don't.
Ah, I like that. I'm gonna steal that.
Well, that's okay. It's not
Well said.
copyrighted, so it's
Well said, sir. And with that, Steve, thank you again for being here. So greatly appreciated.
thank you.
And
I just want
yeah,
this people want to follow. You can get a book, gives you a guide to help yourself out of the situation you're in.
and we are going to put all of Steve's links in the bio. You're going to be able to find his book. You're going to be able to find where to get it. You're going to be able to figure out where to get a hold of Steve. And again, thank you, Steve. And until the next time, God bless.
Thank you so much. This was wonderful.
If this conversation hit home for you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who might need it. And remember, healing doesn't happen all at once. It happens one decision, one step, one day at a time. We'll see you on the next one.